Hello, Michigan Realtors. I'm Brian Westron, and welcome back to a new year of Letter of the Law. This installment represents the start of Season 3, and with a new season, we intend to build off each new installment with a From the Mailbag Q&A to enhance your viewing experience. Today's Letter of the Law covers confidential client information. Many realtors and their clients have mistaken ideas about what is and is not confidential information. All realtors know that they owe a duty of confidentiality to their clients. But what not all realtors understand, however, is that not everything learned during an agency relationship is confidential. As a general rule, information you learn about your client is not confidential if it is learned from an outside source, or even if it's just available from an outside source. If, for example, a realtor represents the seller, information learned from or about a potential buyer is not confidential information. The terms of a buyer's offer are not confidential and may be shared with other buyers in an attempt to negotiate a better deal for your seller client. Likewise, information that is publicly available is not confidential. For example, the fact that the sellers are in the middle of a divorce is not confidential because it is a matter of public record at the courthouse. Now, this divorce example provides a good bridge to an important distinction. Even if information is not confidential in the legal sense, a realtor's duty of loyalty might still prohibit him or her from disclosing certain information about their client. So, for example, if the sellers are in the middle of a divorce, while the fact of the divorce is not confidential, if the sellers do not want this information disclosed, or if the disclosure would not be in the seller's best interest, then the listing realtor's duty of loyalty obligates him or her to remain silent. Now, the same would be true about the fact that the sellers accepted $10,000 less than the current list price on a prior deal that fell through. Technically, this information isn't confidential because it is known to other agents or to the agent's buyer client. But the listing realtor's duty of loyalty requires him to remain silent on the issue since disclosure of that information would not be in the seller's best interest. Now, you may be asking, if there's a duty not to disclose a client's information, why does it matter if that duty stems from the duty of confidentiality or the duty of loyalty? Now, this distinction is important primarily because the duty of confidentiality survives termination of the agency relationship, while the duty of loyalty does not. So, for example, once the listing realtor's agency contract expires, she would be permitted to tell a buyer client that the seller previously accepted an offer at a price $10,000 less than the list price. Another situation in which it may be important to be able to accurately determine what is and what is not confidential information is in a dual agency situation. Now, dual agency contracts typically contain a provision whereby the clients both acknowledge that the dual agent will not disclose confidential information that they know about the other client. What realtors sometimes forget is that not everything they know about the property is confidential. Remember, information will not be confidential if it is a matter of public record or if it was learned from an outside source. A recent Ohio case shows just how confusing this can be. This Ohio case involved a home that had been listed by the defendant agent. An initial sale fell through after an inspection revealed numerous structural defects with the home. Now, a second buyer made an offer which was accepted by the seller. This second buyer, however, was also represented by the same agent who listed the home, and thus the listing agent was a dual agent in the second transaction. Now, the dual agent did not disclose to the second buyer what he knew regarding the material defects disclosed in the first buyer's inspection report. After the transaction closed, the second buyer discovered the property defects and sued the agent, alleging breach of fiduciary duty for failing to disclose known defects. Now, the agent tried to defend his actions by arguing that the information regarding the property defects, which was contained in the first buyer's inspection report, was confidential. The agent argued that he could not have disclosed this information to the buyer without breaching the fiduciary duties he owed to the seller. But in the case, the court ruled against the agent, finding that the agent had in fact breached his fiduciary duties owed to the buyer. the court stated that a dual agent representing both the buyer and the seller owes a fiduciary duty to disclose to each of them all non-confidential information material to the transaction. The information regarding the property defects, which appeared in the inspection report, was material to the transaction. Now, legally speaking, that information was not confidential because it was learned from an outside source, the outside source being the previous buyer's inspection report. Since the information regarding the property defects was not confidential information, the agent owed no duty to the seller to remain silent, and in fact was obligated to disclose this information to the buyer. This case provides a good lesson as to what is and what is not confidential information, and why it's important to understand the distinction. The case also illustrates just how difficult it can be to serve in the capacity as a dual agent. A realtor acting as a dual agent cannot always avoid potential liability simply by remaining silent and not telling either party anything. Thank you for tuning in to this installment of The Letter of the Law. As we start the new year, the legal team at Michigan Realtors looks forward to bringing you legal content to help you thrive in your daily business. Please direct your questions and suggestions for future topics to the email listed below. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.